What's up everybody, it's Blue here at bluebearsgames, and this week I'm going to be doing a Blues Budget Battle Brew build. This is a custom build for a customer actually. I know that I said a couple days ago on my video on Monday that I'd probably be doing a commander deck, however things that I had ordered for a custom build had come in the mail, so I can finally complete the video, and they actually want this video done. This is going to one of our neighbors in the north. It's actually going to Canada. The person actually ordered 4 decks plus the custom deck, 2 pre-con commander decks that I make, and then 2 60-card decks that I make. And this is actually a deck that they wanted to have built for their friend, and the only parameters I was given was a giant deck. There are many ways I could have gone about doing a giant deck. I wanted to try to make this as best as I could for the budget that I was given. Now, as far as the budget goes, originally I was given a $50 budget, but we here at bluebearsgames just want to bring that price down for everybody because not everything in Magic has to be expensive. So I got it all the way down to $25. What did I come up with? Let's find out. So the catalyst for why I built the deck in the colors I did, which are obviously, as you can see, blue and red, was this card right here is Aegir the Freezing Flame. I was going through my bulk stuff trying to organize because I redid all of my setups, and this guy I ran across as the guy was asking for a giant deck, so I decided why not. So what does he do? He is 3 to cast, so he's a red and a blue and one of any for a 3/3. So a 3 to cast, 3/3 right off the bat, always good. Legendary Giant, also a wizard. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, if a wizard or a spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card. So basically, if for some reason he's blocked by a 1/1, you'll be dealing excess damage to the creature, so that means that you'll be drawing a card. So I got 2 of them in there. These are the catalysts for the whole deck. So it's a giant theme, and when I say giant theme, he asked me for a complete and total giant theme. So every card in here, minus maybe 2, will have giant in it in some way, shape, or form. Alright? So the next one, we're going to go with the 3-drop. Now, as you can see, there's no 1 or 2 drop, just because giants don't have them. So I had to make up for that in some way, shape, or form. We'll see how that goes. Bonecrusher Giant was the next one. So it's a 3 to cast for a 4/3. So obviously great stats right off the bat. You always have to love when something has more power than the actual mana value. So there's a couple unique things about Bonecrusher, and if you've been playing in any recent standard stuff, not in the last year, but you know, pre-pandemic, right as Throne of Eldraine came out, you will see that this card was heavily played. So it's a 3 to cast 4/3 that has whenever Bonecrusher Giant becomes the target of a spell, Bonecrusher Giant deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. That includes yourself, so be aware of that. So that's the first part. So it's a 3 to cast 4/3, always good. It has the adventure on it, and the adventure is actually really good. So for 2 as an instant, and if you don't know how to play adventures, it's pretty simple. You can cast it for the adventure and do the ability of the adventure, and then exile the card, and then cast it later for the actual card itself. So you can cast Stomp, is what this one's called, for 2, and then you can exile it, and next turn, possibly, for 3, play Bonecrusher Giant itself as a 4/3. So Stomp itself is an instant, it's an adventure, and some things are affected by that. And then it says damage can't be prevented this turn, and Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. So it's essentially a shock with the damage can't be prevented clause added to it. So that means all damage, not just the damage from Stomp. So I got 4 of them, and normally when I do a budget brew, I do like 4 total rares for the deck. This one, because giants were so cheap, I was able to do it because it was an extended budget. It was a higher budget than normal. I was aiming for 50. I ended up doing way better than 50. I did half. I want to make the best I can on the custom builds. So we get more rares out of that. All right. Anyway, moving on. Next up was Trinker Daredevil. So this card alone takes this out of the realm of a Pioneer or a standard deck, obviously. It's a modern deck. For the most part, this deck is modern, and you can bump it down to Pioneer if you want to by taking out some cards, but it would take away the fun of the deck. So what does Trinker do? It's a 3 to cast 1/3. It's a goblin. It's the only non-goblin, but it makes all your giant spells cost 2 generic mana less to cast. So, excuse me. It makes good old Bonecrusher Giant 1 red to cast for a 4/3. So, it's a reductive cost. It reduces the cost of all your stuff that you're trying to play in this deck. It was the only thing I could do because there are no 1-drops and there are no 2-drops that really fit into this theme at all. So I got 2 of them in there, and I would have done 4, but there was no reason, because if you have multiples of these out after the second one, it's not really helping you any. Up next, we have Calamity Bearer. So it's a 4 to cast, so it's 2 red and 2 generic for a 3/4. It's a giant, of course. And then if a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. This is where you're going to end up. This is basically your win con for this deck. So basically everything in here will be dealing double damage. And remember that they are multiplicative. So if you have multiples out, like there are 4 in this deck, if you have 2 out, it does double then double again. So keep that in mind. This was your win con. So having one of these out with some giants that can attack was pretty much game, because giants all have at least 4 or 5 tough power. So he himself has 3, but I mean, just think about that for a second. So 3 hitting something for 6. If you have 2 of them out, now you're hitting them for 12, because it's double then double again. Okay, it's a lot of damage. Up next, Tectonic Giant. It's 4 to cast for a 3/4, so it's 2 red and 2 generic. Whenever Tectonic Giant attacks or becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you get to choose the following, one of them. It deals 3 damage to each opponent, which is always good. Or you can exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them, and until the end of your next turn, you may play the card. So it says play because if one of them is a land, you can actually play the land off of this. So, and I got 4 of them in here because, like I said, the additional budget that I was given, plus the fact that giants were very cheap, made it so that I could do that. Now I had to go and order a lot of these because I didn't have them on hand, and that's why this took maybe 2 weeks to put together, and that's why I was surprised they came in today. But it's a pretty good deck. So far, this is actually, from what I can tell, it's going to run very smoothly. Alright, up next we have Quakebringer. We'll tie it all in with Quakebringer. It's 2 red, 3 generic. It's a 5/4 giant. So it's a 5 to cast 5/4. So that's about on par for the mana value, 2 power toughness. Your opponents can't gain life, always important, especially if you've been playing on something like Arena, where you see a lot of those life gain decks. Quakebringer, a little tip for you, is probably your key to stopping that, for lack of a better word, fuckery. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quakebringer deals 2 damage to each opponent, and this ability triggers only if Quakebringer is either on the battlefield or in your graveyard, but you also control a giant. So if he's in the graveyard and you have, say, Calamity Bearer out in play, he's in the grave, he'll deal 2. Now, the good thing is, that's for each copy, and I've got 4 of them in here. So if there are 3 of them in your... Here's where it gets really cool. If there are, say, 2, let's just say 2 of them are in your graveyard, and you have this little doodaddy out. Where is he at? I have him over here. Where'd he go? Oh, it's right here. Calamity Bearer. If I have Calamity Bearer on the field, so now giants that giant sources that I control are doubled. Well, it's a giant source, right? It's a giant. That's the source. So what's going to happen there is he's going to deal 2 damage for each copy in the graveyard because you have Calamity Bearer in play. Doubled that, so it's 4. So you can, if you have 2, you'll deal 8 damage. So good synergy. They did a lot of good synergy with the newer giants. Alright, some of the blue stuff. Not much blue, but a little bit, aside from the first card you saw. Cyclone Summoner is just a Winsmore card, so it's 2 blue and 5 of any. Remember, Stink Trinkers are in here to reduce the cost. It's a 7/7, and then when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, return all permanents to those hands, except for giants, wizards, and lands. So it's a board wipe for the most part. It helps clear the board. I say it's a Winsmore, but sometimes it's actually the only way it's going to win. Alright, then some of the spells. I'm keeping on the giant theme, so Crush Underfoot had to go in here. It's basically a 2 to cast bite card. So it's 2 to cast for a tribal instant giant, and then I get to choose a giant I control, and it deals its damage equal to its power to target creature. So it's basically a bite card, only you have to choose a giant. Glimpse the Cosmos fits the giants as well. So it's a 2 to cast sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, you put one of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And then the cool thing about it is, as long as you actually control a giant, you may cast Glimpse the Cosmos from your graveyard by paying a blue rather than paying its mana cost. And then if you cast Glimpse the Cosmos this way, obviously you would exile it. It would be exiled instead of going to your graveyard. So it fits more giant theme. And there's 4 of them in there. The only card that's a little out of place, and I'll explain this, is Pyroclasm. You could also use Synergized to bring, as a substitute to take it out of Modern and put it more into like Pioneer. It's here because giants start at 3 mana, so if you want to help clear the board a little bit beforehand, and Pyroclasm deals 2 damage to each creature. I've got 2 of them in there, so in case you do need to do that, it's kind of in case of emergency, like somebody is doing maybe, red deck wins, or a goblin deck where they've got like 4 or 5 1/1 2 or 2 1s, maybe 2 2s. You can Pyroclasm them off the board so that you can start your own stuff. See, Invasion of the Giants is next. So it's 1 red, 1 blue. It's one of those sagas, and sagas are an interesting addition. This one actually fit the theme very well. It's giant related, so when it comes into play, you're going to obviously scry 2. On the next turn, you're going to do the second ability, which is to draw a card. Then you may reveal a giant card from your hand, and when you do, it deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker, so it's free damage. And then on its third counter, the next giant spell you cast this turn costs 2 less to cast, so it's reducing the cost. So let's follow along here for a second. So here's how it would really work. So first turn, you're going to put down a land. It's most likely going to be a dual land that comes into play tapped, so you have nothing to worry about there. Second turn, you're going to hope to play an Invasion of the Giants. So what that does is it makes it so that you're going to scry 2 when it comes into play. Your next turn, you're going to hopefully play lands. So you're going to be at 3 lands, and you're going to draw a card. Hopefully the scry 2 got you to where you're going to have a land drop for at least 4 turns in a row for the first 4 turns, right? Then you're going to deal 2 damage to something. Hopefully it's most likely on second or third turn. Third turn it's going to be, I want to say it's not going to be a planeswalker. And then when the saga actually triggers on the third one, your hope is that you have 2, 3, 4 lands in play, right? And then you're going to have a reduction of cost of 2. So you can have up to 6 mana available to cast giant spells, right? So the theory here is that you're most likely going to do this. You're going to play something like a Tectonic Giant, that's 4 to cast, or Calamity Bearer, something that's 2 to cast, and then you're going to most likely maybe a Quakebringer. Unfortunately, you can't get to Cyclone Summoner, but you can get up to a Quakebringer, but then you won't be able to do a second thing. You can get a Quakebringer onto the battlefield faster than normal, or you can possibly cast, I'm going to say Calamity Bearer. You want to get a Calamity Bearer in play, and then a Crush Underfoot to take care of a problem that's on the board. That's the most optimal play, if that, that's your god draw, I guess. Anyway, so that's what the Invasion of the Giants do, and then the rest of the deck is pretty simple. We're going to do Swiftwater Cliffs. You want to, when you're a little slower on the draw, I have 24 lands in here. Not normally do I do that. I usually do 20 for the $20 budget decks. This one I did 24, 4 of them being Swiftwater Cliffs. It gains a life when it comes into play, helping keep you alive longer because you may need that. And then we're going to split out 10 and 10 on the mountains and islands. And the reason why I did that is because you don't have a 1 or 2 drop that is consistently going to help keep you alive. So that's how I went about doing it. And your converted mana cost, I'm sorry, I keep messing up. Your mana value, your converted mana value is a little higher on this one. Like your curve isn't as good. You don't have a 1 or 2 drop that's consistent. The only thing you have is something that you can cast to draw cards, or something that you can use to where is it, to help wipe the board a little bit. You don't have anything that can stick on the board that'll stay there. So I kind of, had to put a little bit more land in here just so that you can make sure you get those land drops so you can get to being able to cast things for 3 or 4 or 5 mana. So that's the deck in a nutshell. I mean, this was a pretty basic deck. Like I said, I was given, my parameter was Giants, and then that was it. And I think it's going to run pretty well. So hopefully they're happy with it, and happy birthday to the person who's going to be receiving it. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns about the deck, you can go ahead and contact me any way you want. I mean, you've got many options. You can go ahead and contact me on the Facebook page. You can send me an email at bluebearsgames@gmail.com if you want to, or you can go ahead and put a comment in the section below, and we can talk about the deck. To the person who's getting the deck, if you have any questions, please go ahead. I'm available almost all day, every day. So, other than that, do me the favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this out to anybody who's looking to build a budget giant deck. Who knows? There's many different things people like to make out there. So that's it for the day. Have a good one, and I will see you all next week.